Hello and welcome to the Tim Robinson podcast. With me, your host, Tim Robinson. My background is in coaching males to build bodies that they can be happy with, and this podcast mirrors my never-ending quest to optimize human happiness, health, and performance. Each week, we'll get a chance to speak to other experts in the field of health to consolidate our ideas and create a show full of insights to help you go to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Tim Robinson. Hello guys, and welcome to episode 4 of the Tim Robinson Coaching Podcast. Today I'm talking to David, and David is a fat loss coach, but what we really ended up digging into was our own kind of stories that share a bit of a similar path. We spoke about basically how an unhealthy lifestyle, including things like smoking weed, alcohol, and that's kind of the background, and we share some things in common there, and how that and reaching a state of unhealthiness basically created a really strong stimulus for us to change and become the people we are today, which is undoubtedly people that are still working. It's not like we're still working for issues. It's not like we've got everything settled, but decided to make a conscious decision to change our health and fitness. And through that, hopefully it's a story you guys can relate to and learn something from, especially when we're talking about some of the techniques that we use with clients when it comes to fat loss and making sustainable change, but also techniques for also reflecting on the journey of living with anxiety and learning to manage anxiety, and how both of us actually have got a bit of a history of anxiousness, but how we've managed to kind of come through that and not be so anxious anymore. So guys, give it a watch, and I think there's some real strong takeaways here that you can apply into your training and your lifestyle. So enjoy. All right, so David, welcome to podcast episode number 4 of the Tim Robinson podcast.
How you doing there?
Good. I'm well, man, and thanks for coming on board. So before we get the chat, thank you, man. So before we get the chat going, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to the listeners and let the listeners know why basically I've got you on board for the podcast. So yeah, what kind of I think we first spoke 6 years ago on the phone. Yeah, and this is actually the first time we've ever spoken face to face, but we had quite a long chat 6 years ago because I remember you were interested in doing a course I was doing at the time, Body Transformation Academy, and yeah, we had a bit of a dialogue back and forth about whether or not you wanted to do the course. And but subsequently, since then, I've been following you on social media, and what I've actually appreciated about your posts is basically your honesty, your frank honesty, and your willingness to display yourself as a real human being. And I can relate to you a little bit. What you share in your posts with some of your before and after photos of yourself, I can relate to it because you talk about, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but you talk about how you've had some, which I think pretty much everyone has issues with, some basic, whether you identified it as addictive patterns of behavior, or you mentioned like booze and smoking weed and things like that. And to see where you come from, like in terms of your physique, but also the way you're managing yourself to where you are now, I think it's a very, very good story for basically the average Joe off the street that doesn't feel like they can ever have a body like that, or they could ever get into a fitness lifestyle, because you've really kind of demonstrated that you've taken yourself from over here and all the way over to here. And based on one of the posts I read, you had some health implications from where you were at, and then you've really kind of transformed that to now, to where you're to where you're basically, you've got health, fitness lifestyle, and you've got good physique. And yeah, I think that's inspirational for people. So I think it's just be really, really good to kind of hear a bit of your story, so the people listening to this would be like, you know what, I can do it. And so yeah, that's kind of why I've got you on board, man.
Cool. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, kind of like you said, really how it all started. I was the complete opposite to what you can imagine. You hear all of these fitness enthusiasts and the influencers, and they've lived this sort of perfect lifestyle. And yeah, I was the complete opposite. So like you said, yeah, I did have a background where I was smoking weed almost on a day-to-day basis. I was drinking probably, I'd say 7 days in a row. I was probably clubbing it up, I would say 4 to 5 nights in a row. It's going back to that sort of lifestyle. I mean, yeah, I'm 31 now, but going back then, about, I would say 17, 18, 19, it was a crazy life. I must admit though, I didn't get myself into the class A's, so that was one thing I didn't do. But yeah, no, it was a pretty crazy sort of lifestyle, I guess, back then for me. But like I say, a lot of it sort of started changing when I started going through the issues I had with anxiety, and it's I think a lot of people, they kind of go through this, and if anybody has had anxiety, and if anybody has gone through that sort of process where you're heavy breathing, you can't quite catch your breath, it's a very scary experience. I had all sorts of things going through my head. The fact that I'm a smoker, and I was basically eating fast food and stuff, and just eating ridiculously unhealthy foods on a regular basis. And it just got to a point now where the feeling that I felt inside me, I didn't like it. And I knew something had to change. And I think as well, I think there was one point, I think when I was at a pub, and not that I really sort of like to, not that I kind of like want to sort of like pick on certain people and stuff, but there was an elderly guy who I used to see in the pub all the time. And he was a heavy smoker, and he was, I'd say, probably in his 70s. He was a full raging alcoholic. And I just thought to myself, like, this is all fun now while I'm young, but if I carry on doing something like this, that's going to be me in years. And you could see he had no one really around him apart from all of his pub mates, and that was really it. And I just thought to myself, that's not the life I want to live. That's not what I want to lead to. So yeah, like I said, anxiety, that was the big key thing there. And it scared the life out of me. Now, I've always been quite an anxious person, and I've always thought the worst out of situations. So I started thinking, the way that I'm breathing, is it cancerous and stuff like that? Is it, like all this, like, is it a heart attack? Or, because I was getting them like quite regular. Clearly it wasn't, it was anxiety. And I just thought to myself, like, yes, okay, after being checked and everything had the all clear, I thought to myself, I could carry on living this lifestyle because I know everything's okay now. But say if I carry on and at some point my health is at risk, I'm always going to look back and think to myself, that was a time that I could have changed. That was a wake-up call. And if I don't do something about it now, I'm going to regret it. So yeah, that's kind of where it all sort of stemmed from. That's where it all began.
Wow. And then one thing led to another, and then you actually said, you know what, I'm actually going to work in fitness.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, look, I ended up losing quite a bit of weight. Not that I was ridiculously overweight, but I certainly wasn't in shape. And in terms of like physical health and stuff, running for a bus and going up the stairs, feeling ridiculously breathless, and just not being able to do those things, you just think to yourself, again, these are red flags here. You need to do something about it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, man. Okay. So I think that's quite inspirational because, yeah, you've basically been, well, you would probably term that as close to the bottom of the barrel, how you felt at that point, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite horrific, to be fair, because I think I was in a situation at the time where it almost felt like at certain times with the anxiety and everything, you just feel like your head's going to explode at times and you just can't think straight. You've just got this foggy brain, should I say. And it's just something that you think to yourself, I can carry on living like this, or I can make a change.
Yeah.
And the thing is, change is a very hard thing to do. When we talk about like, that you're going to have to probably stop going through this drinking phase, and you're going to stop like smoking weed, and you're going to stop smoking cigarettes. You got to think this is also to do with the people that you're hanging around with. So this also doesn't just mean that you're going to give up certain habits there, but you're also looking about your social gatherings as well, the people that you surround yourself around. And my best friends as well, one of them, he's actually given up smoking, I think, the past year. But we're 11 years down the line now, and one of my other best friends, he's still smoking as well. But it gets to a point where literally like they try and peer pressure you, like, go on, have a cigarette, Dave, go on, you want one, And I think it got to the last point when I kept trying to give up, and then like they would offer eventually, like you'd just be like, oh, go on in, yeah, I'll have one. It got to the point where I just didn't tell people what I was doing. It's just kind of like, you know, when it comes down to like, you know, you're with people that are, you know, smoking weed and stuff like that. Again, you know, it's going to be, are they going to be understanding? And when you tell them that you want to, I mean, look, the people that you hang around, they should be supportive with things like that, you know, but if it does mean that sometimes you might need to change your group of friends, or even just kind of like get yourself away from them for a little bit. And it's not to say that these people are bad people, but it just means that if you want to improve yourself as a person and self-development, it just kind of means that at times you just need to get yourself away from that environment and just purely focus on you.
Yeah. It's I think it's a harsh truth, but I heard this, that a lot of times when if your group of friends, if you start improving yourself, your group to your group of friends, what you're doing, because you're one of them, is you're basically showing them up, and you're being like a mirror, because you're saying the way I live my life right now is not good enough for me anymore. And through basically wanting to change your life, you're basically making them reflect on themselves and make them feel, to an extent, they have to face themselves and realize there's scope for improvement for themselves, if you know what I mean. And it probably happens on a subconscious level, but a lot of times when friends see you trying to improve yourself, they kind of, I've heard that's one of the reasons that they don't want you to, because they don't want you to improve yourself, and then they have to face the fact that they're not working on themselves, if you know what I mean.
100%, yeah. And this is a big thing, and you probably know as well yourself as a coach, that when it comes down to us coaching our clients and we talk about small changes, they've got that fear factor. And like you say as well, the group of friends, they don't particularly want you to change because they think they're also going to lose you as a friend, when it may not necessarily be the case of that. But it just means that, yeah, like you say, you're trying to better yourself. And it could just be, so like, I'll give you an example. If I'm working with somebody who I know that they're one thing, all right, before the pandemic started, but you know, going to the pub like on a Friday evening, you know, they might end up going for a meal with their friends and then having a few beers after that. It could just be like, all right, cool. Well, maybe your thing that you could be doing, if you don't want to tell your friends, is rather than going for like, you know, the big ultimate burger that you have that's on the menu, drop it down to like a smaller burger on the menu. Probably your friends are not even going to realize that, but already there you've probably shaved off a good few hundred calories from that. But when we talk about big changes, we all know, and I think you'd probably agree as well yourself, that big changes in the end lead to like almost zero results. It's all about bringing in those small changes, and people seem to think as well that when it comes down to making these small changes, like, but that sounds too easy. Surely that's not enough. Of course it is though.
Yeah. When people try and change too many things at once, I mean, don't get me wrong, for some people it does work. Like clients of mine that are like, you know, like I'm fortunate enough that I work with some people that they are literally getting ready for like theatre roles and things like that. And they're like, right, I need to be in shape by this time. But then I'll always have the conversation with them. I'll be like, okay, we can achieve X amount of fat loss, but just to let you know, it's not going to be a sustainable result. And as far as your quality of life is concerned, let's say you're normally walking around at a 7, you can tone that down to like a 4 or 5, maybe even a 3, because you're going to have to be in an extreme calorie deficit, do an obscene amount of cardio to achieve said amount of fat loss. Mm-hmm. But actually, as long as you manage those expectations well, you kind of gear them up, and they're ready for it, and then they just go into it basically. But yeah, as far as actual long-term changes, that's the whole thing about fitness, right? People don't think they need a coach, because eat in a caloric deficit, achieve progressive overload in your training, get 8 hours of sleep a night. Those are all relatively simple things to understand, but what you're actually really dealing with is the whole lifestyle and how a person feels like they belong as a member of their community, and you're playing around with that in order to allow them to change their body and improve their health. So it's massive. It's a massive change, basically, isn't it? So you've got to do it absolutely step by step.
It is, yeah. And I think as well, the difference obviously with, I guess, the clientele that we work with, but for you as well, and also for me, it's always about having that why. Why is it you want to get into that shape? Obviously, for the fact that you've got theatre roles and stuff like that, yeah, you're going to obviously do everything you possibly can to make sure that you get to that sort of physique, that shape. Absolutely. And yeah, I think again, it will really sort of stem down to that why. But yeah, it's also that, and it's going to be down to your mindset.
Yeah. Down to mindset, making those small habitual changes. By the way, I've got a good little spiel, the not drinking thing. By the way,
Oh, nice.
I want to share it with you.
Go for it.
Because yeah, undoubtedly, I work in a city as well, so like City of London, and obviously right now, as we know, it's super quiet. But before, in the square mile, there's such a culture with bankers, brokers, everyone that works in London, whether it's like going out for a lunchtime pint or free drinks. There's historically such a strong drinking culture. So teaching people to manage their alcohol consumption, you've got to have like a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And I know right now, obviously we're out of lockdown, so a lot of people have found it easier to curtail their drinking habits. But when we go out of lockdown again, one of the best tips I found, because a lot of times people do actually want to stop drinking. And I'm not saying, by the way, to anyone watching this, I'm not saying that you've got to stop drinking to be healthy or anything like that. You do what you want with your life. But a lot of times it's just, they feel like there's such a strong social pressure to conform, and it starts to almost choke them a little bit, which is ultimately why they came to you in the first place, right? Because they were having trouble doing it by themselves. And there's basically like a script, but it's understanding tonality as well. So it's two-sided piece. So when people say, are you having a drink? There's always like the devil and the angel, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So there's the angel, which is like, no, I'm not having. I don't want to drink. I've got all my goals. And the devil's like, come on, you want to get pissed? It's fun. And so basically, it's just changing the script, because a lot of people when their friends ask them if they want to drink, they'll be like, I shouldn't, because I'm working with a coach, and it's straight away coming from this defensive point of view, and then it turns into, okay, maybe I'll have one. And of course, alcohol is a substance which lowers your inhibitions. So the moment you have one, you can have two, then you can have three, then you can have four. Whereas it's changing the script, which is just understanding the script, which is basically going, you know what, I'm actually off it at the moment. I'm absolutely loving it. Yeah, honestly, I'd recommend it to you. The thing is, you got like your brain's clearer. You don't wake up with anxiety the next day. It's funny because while everyone's kind of maybe getting a bit drunk around you, you can actually coherently say what you want to say. But you go ahead, man. You do you. It's absolutely fine. And so there's two pieces to that, right? So one is the script, because it's not the usual script. It's you're straight away saying how much you're enjoying taking alcohol away from your life. And that's just, I've never heard someone say that to me in a pub ever. That hasn't been drinking,
Yeah, definitely. I think you can use that with quite a lot of things, actually, the way how you just said that as well. And it's just like, it could be especially when you go to social gatherings and, you've got the crisps out there, and then you've got the cake there, and you've got, everything kind of all over the place there. And somebody's like, oh yeah, do you want like this and that and whatever? And you're just like, yeah, I'm cool actually at the moment. I ate literally just before I came out, and it could just be little things like that. But the tone that you're giving as well to the person that you're talking to is you're telling that person, but really deep down inside, I do want that.
Yeah.
Now you're making it as if like, it's something quite bad to have. But if you kind of flip it, like you just said, I really do quite like that, you just kind of like empower it a little bit more.
100%. And you know what, when you said it in your words, you did the next bit that I'm going to say, because there's two pieces, right? Here's a really clever psychological part, right? Which is basically it's the tonality thing, right? Because there's something called inflection. So when you raise your vocal tone, what you're doing is so let's say like someone says, do you want a beer? And you go, well, I shouldn't. So what you're doing is you're raising your vocal tone, so you're inflecting your vocal tone up, and what that does is that supplicates to the other person, so that your vocal tone says that your other person's opinion is superior to yours, right? Like
Yeah.
let's say, for example, if you were trying to talk to a girl, for example, right, and you were plucking up your courage and you just said, "I just wanted to tell you you look really nice." Whereas if you just went up to her and said, "I just had to let you know you look really nice," you see the difference in those two,
Yeah.
and it's the vocal tone. So basically, it's the sub communication, and it's funny because actually you can teach that to your clients, right? Which is sub communication. That's something we should talk about, man. Because it's super important. If you did a perfect example of it. You like spoke from an empowered ownership place when you were like, you know what, I ate before I came here, and I'm all right actually. But which is that's absolutely that your voice is level. It conveys ownership. You're not supplicating to the person. The person you're having a conversation with is equal to you. Whereas if you said it like, you know what, I'm all right actually. I ate before I came.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what are you on about? Have a piece of cake. So yeah, that's just one, the script that you're using, and just two, the an awareness of your tonality, and but of course hey man, that takes practice and awareness. These things maybe you'll get mastered overnight, but I think, yeah, like you said, like small changes, right? Like this takes
Small changes. Yeah. I mean, look, come on, let's be honest. To the consumer, when you end up talking about things like that, it doesn't sound sexy. We expect it, like, I guess for you it might be a little bit different because of the sort of the clientele that you're probably working with. They probably want like meal plans and stuff like that and get everything kind of sort of structured out. But for me, I guess it's probably a little bit different because I work a lot with parents. So my main thing that I work with are busy parents that want to burn that belly fat really and just increase their energy levels. They probably had nights, where they've been up with a crying baby all night, and I could totally relate to that, being a father of two. So it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, we just kind of bring in obviously those subtle changes, and yeah, like obviously we know that small changes lead to big results for the long term, obviously. And yeah, it's just I guess the one thing, depending on what the person's goal is, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say we kind of like alienate like certain foods, and we wouldn't necessarily say that's good and that's bad, but rather good quality, bad quality, and stuff like that. I don't know what your approach is. What's your approach normally when it comes down to?
Yeah, we know what, it's funny, isn't it? Because there's this whole thing about intuitive eating right now, and eat what you want. And I can't believe I used to ban food groups. Whereas I've worked with clients that they can only eat one square of chocolate, which then turns into an all-out binge, which then turns into sabotaging their goals. So I think, you know what, it's funny with food groups. Sometimes if a food literally is psychologically triggering for you, as in you eat it, and then it reactivates a memory of a time when you ate that food to cope with the trauma from the childhood. you know then sometimes for the purpose of achieving your goal and maintaining happiness in your life, it may actually be better to not eat chocolate if chocolate is hypothetically a triggering food for you. So yeah, I think you have to look at it like on balance, like what is their goal? If eating chocolate consistently makes them binge, gain weight, reverse their all the hard work and effort and money that they've spent to get where they are, then you might want to say, okay, maybe it's best you don't eat chocolate right now. And maybe that's like an issue where even you might want to go to a therapist or something.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think that kind of leads down to a little route where it's just like, are you a reducer or are you a remover? Because like you say, if it's a trigger food and you feel that as soon as you start eating that food that you can't put it down after that, then you've got to remove it completely. Now, for me, I mean, the missus came in the other day. We were just sorting out our conservatory and all that, and just sort of clearing things up. And she was just so I bought her, it was Valentine's Day over a week ago now. I got her a big bar of like dairy milk chocolate. She only opened it a week later, and she was like, "Oh, do you fancy a little bit?" And I'm like, "I'm all right, to be fair." And she brought it in. I was like, "You know what? I haven't had chocolate in God knows how long. Yeah, go on, a little bit." So I had literally just one row of it, and that's it. After that, I literally put it away. Like that's it. I can deal with that. Like chocolate isn't really a big trigger thing for me. I'm more of like a savory person anyway. But for some people, like you say, it could be one square of chocolate, or it could be one row of chocolate they have, and then straight after that, they'll end up having maybe the whole entire bar. And it's being able to manage those things. And if you feel that it's one of those things that you can't manage and you can't control, scrap it out, because you know it's going to lead you into a bad situation.
Yeah. Well, myself as an example, when I was younger, actually it was when I first started doing resistance training, and I would have my blood sugar would just go boom, and I would go and grab bags of cookies afterward. I would go and eat a bag of cookies, inhale it, literally a bag of Yorkie cookies from Asda I used to buy. I would literally inhale it, and maybe because I just doing training for the first time, but it tasted so good that I would be like, and I'd go and grab another one. And I got into a habit, I remember having a food addiction for a while. And this is while I was working in the fitness industry when I just started, where I go and buy bags of cookies. And then I dieted for this show in 2018, and I went like 8 months without any processed food. Not because I wanted to ban that food from my diet, but simply because if you can only eat 2,200 calories a day and you're training and doing cardio, then a cookie is like 400 calories, which makes up, is such a significant portion of your daily calories. And the effect it's going to have for me personally on my blood sugar means I'm going to be hungry very, very quickly afterwards. It was just easier not to have quote unquote processed, fast digesting foods. And through that period of time, I think I just got used to not eating processed foods. But then when I was eventually dieted down and I was fantasizing about all this food I could eat, after the competition that I did, I ate so much, obscene amount of cheap food, if you want to call it that, cookies, chocolates, etc. I felt the most sick I've ever felt in my life, like from food. Honestly, it was like grey sludge was being pushed around my body. If you can imagine how toxic I felt. And ever since then, it's almost like my body has an inbuilt mechanism to where I don't want to overeat those foods anymore, because I never want to feel like that again in my life. But yeah, that's not the technique I'd recommend to a client to.
It's really funny you say that. I mean, I got into training properly. Like I started off really, I guess, doing sort of more like kind of bodybuilding style training. I was doing, I think, about 5-6 days a week. Very much a bro split. And don't get me wrong, like I know a lot of people mug off the bro split and stuff like that for naturals. Bearing in mind, I've never touched anything at all in my life. Like no steroids or anything like that. I trained in bodybuilding gyms, and I was surrounded around people that were doing stuff like that. But you learn so much from those people. I would never ever turn around to people. Like when people accuse me and stuff for like being on steroids, and I'm sure you probably had it yourself as well in the past. And I look at it as a good thing, really, because I think if you think that, I'm doing something right. So, but yeah, it's when I literally, I mean, like I had this very fixed sort of diet with what I followed, and don't get me wrong, I actually really thoroughly enjoyed it. But when you do cut out processed foods, the way your body feels, and you've done it for a period of time, it feels incredible. People turn around at the beginning and be like, "Oh, but that's boring and that's boring." No, you just flavor it up. You just for chicken, I'd always put Cajun seasoning on it. It's been 11 years down the line, me putting Cajun seasoning. I'm still not bored of it. I'll even put some Incona, chili sauce on it and stuff like that. It tastes good. But it's finding what you enjoy, and making sure, like when you end up eating processed stuff, a lot of the time, I don't know, I've suffered with like IBS in my time and stuff like that. So, and when you end up eating poor quality foods, you know, that are not nutrient dense, then you can really find that you do feel like a bit like, you know, bloated and stuff like that, really, in your gut. A lot of people don't realize it, but you can actually kind of like hack your own issues yourself just by keeping track of things. Ideally, yeah, it's fantastic if you can probably like track it on like MyFitnessPal or something like that, your foods. But I mean, I have something as well, which some of my clients use. They say like, David, I really don't want to track my calories. All right, cool, don't. You know, we might end up going for like a portion control sort of way of going around things. And what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to give you my food and mood diary. And I have all my clients in a closed Facebook group. And I've got loads of resources on there, and they can download stuff, and they've got my recipe books on there, and they can download that sort of stuff. So it's like whenever they kind of work with me, you know, we're just making sure that they've got so many resources they can kind of pick from, you know. And I don't tell them to download it all at once, you know. It's just like, go for it, you know, pick something that you find is going to work for you and just focus on that one thing. But the food and mood diary, I think, is a game changer, because what you've got there is you've got like a couple of hours later, you kind of mark that meal. So you've got literally a happy face and mare face, and then you've got like a sad face, and you can kind of circle that out. And if you keep track of that throughout the week, and if you've had that same meal multiple times throughout the week and you felt a bit funny from it, you can hack that yourself and be like, that needs to come out, or that needs to be changed, just to kind of make me feel better. But you would know yourself anyway, like when you end up having a diet that is very high in processed foods, one, when you're trying to drop weight and you're trying to be in a calorie deficit, processed food is obviously very calorie dense. And when you turn around to a client and be like, this is how many calories you kind of want to be focusing on having a day, like, that's barely anything, you know. And it could be something like, maybe, I don't know, it could be 2,000 or even 1,800 calories, whatever their deficit might possibly be. As soon as you change things around and you go for unprocessed foods, the volume that you get out of it is immense. And people don't seem to understand that. Like if I go to Greg's and I get myself like a pastry or something, and, you know, I might get myself, I don't know, like a latte or something like that, or a hot chocolate, right there, you're probably getting the best part of maybe anywhere between 800 to even possibly even 1,000 calories probably. And you think to yourself, I'm not even full from that. Or like a McDonald's meal. You know, the amount of people I speak to and they've had like McDonald's, it's like, well, I don't feel full from it. Yeah, exactly. It's you don't feel full from it. You feel pretty sluggish after it, and probably about an hour later, you're going to feel like all you want to do is just go to sleep. And yeah, you just feel pretty crappy from it.
Another thing, what kind of a few things popped up while you were saying what you just said, but another thing with what you said about processed foods, non-processed foods being boring. I think there's two things there, which is number one, like, it's not that normal food, non-processed food is boring, it's that processed food is chemically addictive. Like it's manufactured to be the most addictive food possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a combination of, there's a book I read a little while ago, and I can't remember the name of it, otherwise I would quote it, but it basically talks about there's certain ratios of sugar, salt, and fat that processed foods will contain, and it's like the magic ratio that basically makes food super chemically addictive, essentially. And having not eaten, by the way, don't get me wrong, like, because I'm bulking right now, I'm trying to eat 3,700 calories a day. There will be times when I'm going to drop in Sainsbury's and buy like a two almond croissants and those chocolate 12 things, because I need to get the calories. So it wouldn't be an accurate assertion to say I don't eat processed food, but for the most part. But actually, funny thing is, when you talk about the way you feel after the food, even though that's a combination, even though that's fat and flour that makes that food, for whatever reason, that manages to sustain my energy okay, and I don't feel like crap afterwards. Whereas if I eat anything out of a wrapper, like a chocolate bar, I feel terrible. So when you talk about the mood, it is that listening to your body that allows me to make that decision. But anyway, so yeah, basically it's understanding that food is addictive, and being someone that has not eaten a predominantly processed food diet. I mean, I've been eating relatively clean now for 3-4 years. When you eat food out of a packet, like a Pop-Tart, it tastes weird. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean there. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one more bit as well. And the other thing as well is when you give up, like let's say for example your diet is predominantly processed foods, you're going out for beer, pizza, or whatever it is, is in terms of managing expectations, it's are actually probably going to have a period of time if you switch to a clean food diet where it's going to be difficult. Like you are actually going to have to go through a cold turkey of sorts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of your whole life you've lived in one way, which is eating chemically addictive food that's been designed to hook you, and you get a certain amount of reward from that, and then to switch to a bunch of food that doesn't give you that same chemical trigger, it's it's going to be difficult for a period of time, but it's having the awareness to recognize it. So when you're going, oh, this food is boring, it's really like your brain is wanting that reward mechanism that it's not used to because it's used to having addictive food, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's a really good thing that I talk to with clients as well. And I don't know if you've ever tried this yourself really with anyone, but if you give a client, or if you give not a client, but if you tell somebody though to boil, say for instance, a packet of rice or whatever, yeah, and you tell them to put that in a bowl, and you'd be like, here you go and eat that. And likely chances are they're going to bring it back to you with probably some rice still left in there. Now, if we change that and we go for something like sweet chili sauce, and we kind of put that in with the rice, mix that all in. Now, obviously, rice is not obviously high in calories, but we're just kind of just making it a little bit more palatable, really. Yeah, you're going to keep eating. You're not, and you're probably going to eat it a lot faster because you think to yourself that the senses that obviously we're getting in our brains, it's just making us want more. Because we eat so quickly, and it's another thing that we want to try and do is reduce down, like you kind of take time a little bit more with how we eat, because a lot of people, they do just kind of eat relatively quick, and it takes obviously quite a period of time. I think it takes about roughly 20 minutes, doesn't it, for our bodies and our brains to kind of process fullness. But yeah, it's just like kind of changing things as well. And yeah, I'm not saying don't make your food obviously taste boring and stuff, but if you are going to be doing stuff like that, make sure that you're counting those calories, and making sure that you're kind of aware of what you're putting into your body. But it's just kind of like making that point there that we can end up eating that bowl of rice, and we know it's got nothing done to it, and we're probably not going to overeat on that. As soon as we add something to it, that's it. You're going to end up eating more, and it's going to be with any foods that you kind of put on the plate, really.
Right. So, I guess the point that you're trying to make there is the more palatable foods are easier to overeat.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like we say, with processed foods, it makes you want more. You always want more all the time.
Yeah.
You're adding sauces to your food, you're going to eat more all the time. And I'm not saying to completely not put sauces on your foods, but it's just kind of just being aware that if you're going to put that on your foods, just kind of be aware that it can obviously lead us to a point of like overeating with certain foods really there. So it's just understanding, like especially with, like you say, with processed foods, you're going to end up feeling, well, you're probably quite lucky at the moment in the sense where you're bulking at the moment. So obviously getting quite a fair bit of calories down. But yeah, when you're dieting though, it's just making sure that you're going for those foods that are obviously a lot lower in calories but higher in volume.
Yeah, for sure, man. Diet, man. Diet is a funny one. Okay, so I want to swing back round, right? I wanna do a U-turn back to the start of the conversation we were having, and I wanted to talk about, when we talk about our old lifestyle, or when I say our old lifestyle, like you mentioned drinking, smoking weed, and things like that. Anyone who knows me personally, and even some of my clients, because I used to do like client get-togethers where, like in years past, where I thought one of the things, it was pretty cool. I used to take my clients out for drinks and stuff every now and then. It was part of like a balanced lifestyle. But for me, I would say that my relationship with various different things like alcohol, my relationship with, I used to smoke cigarettes when I was younger. You know what, drugs? I've never really used drugs. Like, I've never been like, oh, I've got a real problem with coke. But you know, there was a period of time, like a couple of years ago, where for like a few weekends I ended up doing like coke and MDMA. And I'm aware that, anyway, my point is, it's it's not like when I talk about it, like, oh, I used to have be like this. It's not like I used to be like this and now I'm like this. It's actually like there's a bit of that still in me and I manage it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I kind of wanted to talk about, because again, I think this is something that people that will listen to this podcast, there might be people that go, okay, it's okay for you because you used to be like that, but now you're like this. Whereas I am like this. I am like how you used to be, but I'm like it, and I can't change in a way. Or maybe they think they can't change, but the actual reality is, it's, at least for me personally, it was like in a sense, it's like a paradigm shift where rather than thinking I change into a new person, it's more an understanding that I'm always gonna kind of have these things that I have to manage through awareness, if you know what I mean. And just and that actually enables me to perform a hell of a lot better than trying to make this like blanket change, but forget the old person and become the new person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anyway, my thoughts are to you as well, because maybe it's different for you. I don't know, but like with the old lifestyle that you used to have, is that still something that you have to manage consciously, or yeah, how is it for you?
Okay, so in terms of smoking weed, no, I don't even think about that at all. In fact, I think I remember the last time I actually smoked it. I think I was with a friend in Northwest London at the time, and it was a weekend. And I don't know if anyone else has ever had this feeling, but I almost felt like there was kind of like a load of water filling up in my throat. I don't know, maybe it was just the fact that I probably felt like I just wanted to be sick. But I just thought to myself from this point on, I never ever, and I hadn't smoked it for quite a long time. But yeah, I just thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm out with the boys or whatever. We're going to give it a go again, have a bit of a laugh. And I just really didn't like it. There was quite a few things I really didn't like about like smoking weed. Actually, it's, you know, like it could be that there's like, you know, like a pencil on a table that somebody might say, I'll pass that over here. And you're just too lazy to even pick it up. Like you could literally be sat on a table like I am right now, you know, and just sort of like grabbing something to pass over to someone. You just feel so lazy. Some people don't. Some people actually find it very creative. And they could be quite proactive and productive, like when they're smoking stuff. For me personally, I just found that I kind of went down this route where it's just felt really lazy. Hash, on the other hand, like obviously, that I felt pretty good on. I actually quite enjoyed that, but I don't think about doing it. I think it's been the best part of maybe 12 years since I've touched that. It's been 10 years, I think, since I touched a cigarette. So yeah, I gave up. I gave up. It was May 2010. I remember the 9th of May. I actually remember I have it written literally on my phone every single year. Like my motivation to not smoking was always trying to get to 10 years, and I've hit 10 years now. So now the new motivation, I guess, will be 15 years. But you know, it's just little things like that. And it's really weird because I don't know if, like you said, you used to smoke, and when you gave up, I don't know if it was a big thing for you, but I went through like periods of time where I started having nightmares of actually like having a dream of me like smoking a cigarette. Have you had that as well?
No, oh man, okay, so I used to smoke. I used to work in a kitchen when I was younger. I was like 19, 20, and everyone used to smoke there. So I just used to fag break, right?
Yeah.
And so I probably at a certain period of time probably smoked 4 to 10 cigarettes a day. And then and then I always smoked a bit. And up until the age of 25, oh man, imagine this. When I worked in Virgin Active as a fitness manager, I was teaching a class and a lighter fell out my pocket when I was teaching the class. Gosh. And so basically a lighter fell out my pocket, and the guy looked at me and he was like, that was doing the class, he was like, so you smoked then? And I was just like, I can't remember what I said. I might have lied, or I don't know, who knows, but it was shame. I experienced extreme shame, you know, like, And to be honest, ever since then, I was a lot more careful about managing my smoking. And then I smoked less and less and less. It was weird. I just smoked less and less and less and less. And eventually, I think, it was in 2015 when I basically completely gave up, because I just started my new business and I basically didn't really have enough financial security. I was like, I just cannot justify casual smoking because it's so expensive. And then when I've been drunk on nights out and stuff like that, like, you know, I have smoked. Like, I keep it real. Like, I'm not like you know, I'm not someone that hasn't smoked for like years and years and years. But then I don't really drink these days. So at least I haven't done for the last, not this year anyway. So that's not something that I have to consciously manage. Like at the moment, at least it doesn't feel like it for me. Oh, actually, I say that. I went to Serbia last year. No, I went to Serbia in 2019, right? And on a lad's holiday. And basically, just checking now, she's gonna check still there. Okay, so yeah, basically this Serbia story. Oof. So this was 2 years ago, right? And I went on holiday. It was a lad's holiday to Serbia. And when I say a lad, it was me and my flatmate. And you know what? I've been like living healthy and all the rest of it. I thought I'm gonna go and enjoy myself. So I went there for 2 days, 3 days, and I smoked like a chimney, right? And when I got back, because I didn't smoke, when I got back, I was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, what is this feeling? And I was like, what is this feeling? And it was a craving for a cigarette, but I didn't even identify it as a craving for a cigarette at first, because I hadn't smoked a cigarette in so long, right? And then I realized it's a craving for a cigarette. And all of a sudden, it was like I was living my life without craving cigarettes before. And then I went on this holiday. I was like, "Oi, lads," and came back, and there was this. It was like a devil entity, because the craving was like out of nothing. I started desiring something that I didn't want, basically, and it was totally weird. So I was able to observe smoking in a completely different way. And yeah, obviously I knew, okay, well, obviously you have to just observe that craving and let it pass, because there's absolutely no way that you're gonna start smoking. But yeah, that was just a very, very interesting story about how I was able to feel the addictiveness of smoking. But cigarettes for me aren't really like a demon. I guess they were hard to give up to an extent, but it was never really one of those things where I was like, I keep relapsing and it's so annoying. It was just, I just gradually faded it out and didn't really want to do it. And if I was going out, you know, if I was going out drinking or something, I probably would, maybe, potentially. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of where I am with it.
Yeah, I still feel, even though it's been over 10 years of me not smoking, I still think to this day, if I had one cigarette, I think it would get me going again. And it's really funny that I think it took me about 7 years to stop craving a cigarette after giving up, which is crazy, because you think for a long period of time, I never told people that. I kept that to myself, just because I was a bit worried. But then again, I've completely moved away. I was, you know, I started my business and started everything in Essex. And 2 years ago, well, we're not far from where you used to live around anyway, but I now live obviously around sort of like Wokingham. So, but then I started obviously a new business. But then again, the people that obviously I grew up with, and you know, people that were smoking around me, well, they're obviously back wherever they are. So I don't see them at all. So even if it was a situation, like, I'm not surrounding myself by people like that at all anymore. But it's crazy how long it can take for the body to not actually crave it anymore. And I don't know if you had this at all, but it was just like waking up in the morning, and this is going to sound grimy and disgusting, what I'm about to say here, but when you wake up in the morning and you just wake up and you just feel all phlegmy, and then you just, like, anybody that smokes, most people probably experience this, but you wake up in the morning and you just literally got this big ball of phlegm pretty much at the back of your throat. And it was just horrific. It was just one of those things. I just like, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever got to that stage, but yeah. So smoking created a level of discomfort in you that Oof, yeah, that basically made you want to quit. But wow, that's saying that it took 7 years for you to stop craving a cigarette. Oh man, yeah.
Crazy. And I still think to this day, even though it's been over 10 years, I still think to this day, if I had one, it possibly make me want to start again. I'm not willing to get a chance anyway.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, oof, I guess smoking is okay. When I was trying not to smoke when I was younger, when I was trying to give up, what I found it hard to give up because it was so, at least a decade ago and a decade and a half ago and 2 decades ago, it was so socially woven into society. Everything was like, going out, socializing. Yeah, every event in life you could attach cigarettes to that, right?
Definitely.
And I think alcohol was a similar one. And that's, yeah, I mean, alcohol is definitely one of the alcohol can be a tough thing for people to manage because it's so socially woven into everything that people do. And the other thing as well is the reward mechanisms of the brain. And as someone, by the way, just keeping it real, like I'm someone that's definitely had struggles, challenges with drinking. So that's certainly something that I've really had to kind of go through a bit of a cold turkey with, really. Do you know what, actually? The hardest thing about, because I used to, like yourself, going out partying 7 days a week sometimes, I used to go out so often that I could almost, like, if I felt down, I could find someone to go out with. And then it was a scary thing. When I felt down and I couldn't find someone to go out with, like when I moved to Bristol by myself when I was younger, when I was basically, that was when I first started drinking by myself. And so basically drinking became a way for me to deal with any time I felt down. And what I had to learn in life, this is so weird. It's so weird because now it's so natural for me. But what I had to learn with alcohol is that it's normal to feel shit sometimes. Like I was so used to blocking out feeling shit with alcohol, and it was so normalized to me. Like it'd be part of the conversation I have with people. Oh, I felt had to have a few drinks last night because I had some bad news. Whereas now, yeah, I think it was back in 2019. It's back in 2019 actually, where I consciously decided to give up alcohol for a little while, and so I've been doing it for about 3 months. And I went to go and change my phone bill because I went to try and change my phone contract because I realized they'd been overcharging me for the last 4 months, and it really wound me up. And I just remember, I went to the phone shop to try and deal with it. They were useless, and they gave me the old spiel: we only sell you phones. We can't deal with the back of office stuff. And then they gave me the number to call, and they couldn't deal with it in the back of office because something was shut down in the back of office. So I couldn't get my problem dealt with. And it created such an amount of stress to me that I remember really, really being challenged at that time because I just wanted to, like, I just knew if I would drink some alcohol, that pain would go away. And it was just that, like, hunger and desire to have the alcohol. But the funny thing was, because I passed through that, because I didn't phone up a mate to ask if they wanted to go for a drink, actually then I realized that it's normal to feel crap sometimes. And the funny thing is, that situation wouldn't stress me out anymore. I honestly can't believe 2 years ago that I got stressed about that. It's like laughable to me. So as a result of not, as a result of basically just that fundamental shift in the mind, which is that it's normal to feel crap sometimes. Just have, because that's what developing strength is, right? It's developing inner strength is the ability to accept when you're not having a good time and just move through it.
Normal, it's fine to feel like shit at times. That's part of life. Anybody that thinks you're meant to live and feel, like you lead this perfect life, like, no, it doesn't exist. And if you do feel like that, then teach me something, please. But it's perfectly normal. Like, literally, we have to have emotions and stuff. We've got obviously ups and downs. And it's just about learning how to deal and how to cope with them. But yeah, just find something that you can deal with, probably for that temporary high from alcohol and drugs. It's very easy to do that, but as soon as that wears off, you're probably just going to feel exactly how you feel.
There's an amazing documentary by Adrian Charles called A Drinker Like Me. And Adrian, who's basically Adrian Charles, is like a football pundit. And basically he says he's had anxiety disorder and depression since a young age. But then they look into his drinking habits, and he drinks pretty much every day for 20, 30 years. Anyway, I can just say, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but I can just say, if ever I drink alcohol, my anxiety the next day is, don't get me wrong, if I'm at a festival and I'm having a great time, or if I'm on holiday, maybe it's different. But like, if I would drink by myself or go out with friends and I've got work the next day, my anxiety just skyrockets. So yeah, it's not only, I think, when you drink alcohol or use kind of stimulant drugs, does it you go back. But in my opinion, in my experience, you're worse than you were